Hey guys, tonight we are going to dive into a world that looks polite on the surface, but is actually a minefield of secret codes, passive-aggressive insults, and repressed desires. We are traveling back to the Victorian era, but we aren't going to look at the steam engines or the foggy streets of London. We are going to sit in a stuffy drawing room and look at a flower arrangement. Why? Because in the 19th century, handing someone a bouquet wasn't just a nice gesture, it was a text message. And if you picked the wrong flower, or even handed it with the wrong hand, you could accidentally tell your crush that you hated their mother or that they were stupid. Tonight, we are going to decode the language of flowers, or floriography. It is a system so complex, it makes modern dating apps look simple. So, put on your gloves, because we are about to handle some very thorny communication. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, drop a comment below and let me know, what city are you in right now, and what time is it there? And if you have ever received a gift that you secretly hated but had to smile about, leave a rose emoji in the comments, so I know I'm not alone. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let us ease into tonight's journey together. Imagine you are a young woman or man in London. Around 1850, you are sitting in a parlor that is cluttered with velvet furniture, heavy drapes, and china figurines. The air is stiflingly hot because the windows are shut tight against the miasma, bad air outside. Across the room sits a person you fancy. You want to tell them, but you can, because in Victorian society, direct expression of emotion is, well, it's just not done. If you walked up to someone and said, "I think you are hot," you would probably be exiled to a colony. Even saying, "I admire you," is risky. Every conversation is monitored by chaperones, aunts, and the crushing weight of social etiquette. You are trapped in a silence of propriety. You are screaming inside your corset or your stiff collar. So, what do? You look at the vase on the table, you see a red tulip, you catch the eye of your crush. You pick up the tulip, you hand it to them, they blush. Why? Because in the dictionary of flowers, a red tulip doesn't mean nice spring flower. It creates a sentence. It says, "I declare my love." This brings us to a mainstream historical fact: the era of suppression. The Victorian era is famous for its emotional repression, but psychologists and historians argue that when you suppress a human need like communication, it doesn't disappear. It sublimates. It finds a crack in the wall. Floriography was that crack. It was a covert channel. It allowed people to have full-blown arguments, affairs, and breakups right under the noses of their parents, using nothing but vegetation. But here is the problem. You handed them the tulip. But what if you had handed them a yellow tulip? That means there is sunshine in your smile. Friend, zoned. What if you handed them a variegated tulip, striped? That means you have beautiful eyes. Flirty but superficial. And it gets worse. You have to know which dictionary they are using. This leads to a niche, panic-inducing detail: the dictionary wars. There wasn't just one official code. There were hundreds. In 1850, you could buy The Language of Flowers by Miss Carruthers, or The Floral Oracle, or The Sentiment of Flowers. And they didn't always agree. In one book, a daffodil might mean regard. In another, it might mean uncertainty. Imagine trying to send a text message where "hello" might also mean go away, depending on which phone carrier the other person uses. You are playing a high-stakes game of botanical roulette. You watch your crush holding the tulip. They are smiling. But are they smiling because they like you, or are they smiling because they think you just complimented their smile? And wait, did you hand it with your right hand or your left hand? Because if you handed it with your left hand, you might have just reversed the meaning entirely. I declare my love. Right hand becomes, I do not declare my love. Left hand. You start to sweat. The parlor feels even hotter. You realize that this isn't just a game. It is a minefield. You have initiated a coded conversation, and now you have to finish it. But where did this madness come from? Why did the British deciding that vegetables were the best way to talk? You might be surprised to learn that this quintessentially British tradition actually started in a Turkish harem, or at least a British woman's misunderstanding of a Turkish harem. You are about to learn how a game of rhyming words turned into a Victorian obsession. You are no longer in the stuffy London parlor. You are in Constantinople, modern-day Istanbul, in the year 1717. The air smells of spices, coffee, and rosewater. You are following a woman who is wearing Turkish dress, but walks with the brisk, inquisitive stride of a British aristocrat. She is Lady Mary Wortley Montagu. She is the wife of the British ambassador, a brilliant writer, and a woman who refuses to be bored. While her husband is busy with politics, she is busy exploring the hidden world of the Ottoman Empire. She is visiting the harems, the bathhouses, and the gardens, and she discovers something fascinating. She writes a letter back home to England. There is no color, no weed, no fruit, herb, pebble, or feather that has not a verse belonging to it. And you may quarrel, reproach, or send letters of passion, friendship, or civility without ever inking your fingers. She calls it the secret language of the harem, Sidlam. She describes how lovers send packages of random objects, a piece of coal, a match, a flower, to send secret messages that the eunuchs and guards can decode. This brings us to a mainstream historical fact. The game of Swidlam. Lady Mary wasn't lying, but she was mistranslating. In Turkey, Selam wasn't really a language of symbolism. Where a rose equals love, it was a language of rhyme. It was a mnemonic game. For example, you might send a pear armut. It rhymes with umut, hope, so sending a pear meant don't lose hope. It was a punning game. It was clever, linguistic, and auditory. But when Lady Mary brought this idea back to Europe, the rhyme part got lost in translation. English words don't rhyme with Turkish words, so the Europeans stripped away the clever wordplay and replaced it with symbolism. Instead of pear rhymes with hope, it became pear represents affection. They took a witty linguistic puzzle and turned it into a static dictionary of emblems. This leads to a massive academic controversy, the Orientalist fantasy. Did Lady Mary invent the language of flowers, or did she just repackage it? Camp A, the traditionalists, credits her as the mother of floriography. Without her letters, the trend never would have started. Camp B, the post-colonial critics, argues that she projected her own romantic fantasies onto Turkish culture. She saw women in harems and imagined them as tragic prisoners needing secret codes to communicate with lovers. She exoticized them. The secret language was likely just a parlor game for bored women, not a spy network for illicit affairs. Basically, the Victorians fell in love with a fantasy of the mysterious East that didn't actually exist. They built an entire communication system based on a translation error. But the error caught on. Europeans loved it. It fit perfectly with the emerging romantic movement. Nature was the source of truth. Poets like Wordsworth and Keats were already obsessing over daffodils and nightingales. Lady Mary's idea was the spark, but it needed fuel. It needed a book. It needed someone to sit down and actually write the rules. Enter the French, specifically, a woman writing under the pseudonym Charlotte de la Tour. In 1819, she published Le Langage des Fleurs. This one's just a collection of Turkish rhymes. It was a synthesized, organized encyclopedia of sentiment. She pulled from Greek mythology, medieval herbalism, and sheer imagination. She decided that the daisy meant innocence. Why? Because it looks like a baby's eye. She decided the wallflower meant fidelity in adversity. Why? Because it grows on ruined walls. Latour's book was a smash hit. It crossed the channel to England. It crossed the ocean to America. Suddenly, Every publisher in London wanted to print a flower dictionary. They copied Latour. They added their own. They stole from each other. And thus, the chaos began. You are back in the Victorian parlor. You are looking at your crush, holding the tulip. You realize that you are participating in a game of telephone that spans continents and centuries. A Turkish rhyme became a French symbol, became a British obsession. And now, you have to navigate it. But before we get into the complex grammar of bouquets, we need to understand the basic vocabulary. You need to know your colors. Because in this language, red doesn't just mean stop. It means burn and yellow. Yellow is the most dangerous color in the spectrum. You are about to learn why giving someone a yellow rose was basically a slap in the face. You are standing in a bookseller's shop on Fleet Street. The smell of ink and binding glue is thick in the air. You are here to buy a weapon, or rather, a decoder ring. You need a dictionary to understand what that red tulip meant. But you have a problem. On the shelf in front of you, there isn't just one language of flowers. There are dozens. There is The Sentiment of Flowers by Robert Tias. There is The Floral Oracle by Henrietta Dumont. There is The Language of Flowers by Miss Carruthers. They all have beautiful, embossed green covers with gold leaf lettering. They all look authoritative, but they are all lying to each other. You open one. You look up lavender. In Buka, lavender means acknowledgement or devotion. Sweet, right? You open book B. Lavender means mistrust. You freeze. If you send a sprig of lavender to your sweetheart, are you telling them, I am devoted to you? Or are you telling them, I don't trust you? Imagine sending a text message where the emoji for heart also means, I suspect you are cheating. That is the level of anxiety we are dealing with. This brings us to a mainstream historical fact, the copyright chaos. In the mid-19th century, copyright laws were loose. Publishers realized that flower books were the Harry Potter of their day. They were bestsellers. Everyone wanted one. So, publishers rushed to print them. They stole lists from the French Latour. They stole lists from the Americans. They invented meanings on the spot because they needed to fill pages. Robert Tias, a popular author, tried to be scientific. He was a clergyman and a botanist. He tried to base his meanings on the actual biological traits of the plants. But Miss Carruthers, she was a poet. She cared about feelings. She based her meanings on how the flower felt in a poem. The result was a cacophony of conflicting definitions. The language wasn't a language at all. It was a Tower of Babel. You look at the daffodil. In one tradition it means, regard, I respect you. In another, it means uncertainty. In a third, it means deceit. If you hand someone a daffodil, you are essentially spinning a roulette wheel of emotion. This leads to a niche, social reality, the key to the code. Because of this chaos, a strict social protocol emerged. If you were going to engage in a floral correspondence with someone, you had to establish the cipher key. First, you could just send a bouquet. You had to send the book first. You would wrap a copy of Robert Tias' dictionary in brown paper and send it to your lover. This was the signal. We are using this code, ignore the others. It was like two spies meeting in a park to exchange encryption pads before the mission began. If you didn't sync your dictionaries, you were doomed to a breakup caused by a misunderstood weed. But did people actually do this? This brings us to a massive academic controversy, the coffee table book theory. We have hundreds of thousands of these books surviving in archives. They were everywhere. But historians have found very few actual letters or diaries describing complex floral conversations. Camp A, the Romantics, argues that the conversations happened, but the flowers wilted. The evidence was organic, so it disappeared. They believe Victorian lovers really did walk around silently handing each other twigs. Camp B, the skeptics, argues that this was a publishing fad, not a social practice. They suggest that the language of flowers was the Victorian equivalent of a coffee table book. You bought it, you put it in your parlor, you looked at the pretty pictures, you giggled with your friends. Oh, look, a snapdragon means presumption. But you didn't actually use it. It was a novelty. It was like those books today called 1001 Places to See Before You Die. People buy them, but they don't actually go to all 1,000 places. Camp B argues that the language was a fantasy of communication for a society that was bad at communicating. It was a game, not a tool. You stand in the bookstore, holding two contradictory dictionaries. You decide to buy the one with the prettiest pictures. You are playing the game, but even if you agree on the dictionary, there is another layer of complexity. The flower itself is just the noun. To make a sentence, you need adjectives. And in the world of flowers, the adjectives are colors. You put the books on the counter. You are thinking about that yellow rose. In modern times, yellow means friendship. It's what you give your grandma or your colleague. But in the 1850s, if you handed a yellow rose to your wife, you weren't being friendly. You were making a terrible accusation. You were about to start a divorce. You step out of the shop. The London fog is rolling in. You need to go to the florist. But be careful. If the florist tries to slip a yellow flower into your romantic bouquet for contrast, you need to stop him. Because color is just decoration. Color is the difference between a kiss and a slap. You are standing in Covent Garden Market at dawn. The air is cold and smells of rotting cabbage, sweet hyacinths, and horse manure. Flower girls are shouting prices. Rich men, as servants, are haggling for centerpieces. You are here to buy a rose. Simple, right? A rose is a rose is a rose. Wrong in the Victorian language, the rose is not a word. It is a category. It is a spectrum. You reach for a deep, blood-red rose. Red rose, everyone knows this one. It means love, passion, heat. It is the I love you of the floral world. But wait, is it a damask rose? That means brilliant complexion. Is it a cabbage rose? That means ambassador of love. Is it a dog rose? That means pleasure and pain. You have to know your botany. But then you see a white rose. You think, purity. Wedding? Yes. It means I am worthy of you. It is humble. It is chaste. It's the I am a good boy. Girl rose. And then you see the yellow rose. It is bright. It is cheerful. It looks like sunshine. You reach for it. Stop. Do not touch that rose. In the Victorian dictionary, the yellow rose is a grenade. It means jealousy. It means decrease of love. It means infidelity. If you give a yellow rose to your lover, you are basically accusing them of cheating on you, or telling them that you are breaking up with them because you found someone else. It is the we need to talk text of the 19th century. This leads to a niche, chromatic theory, the yellow prejudice. Why yellow? Why is such a happy color associated with such misery? It goes back to medieval color theory. Yellow was the color of bile. It was the color of Judas Iscariot's robes in paintings. It was the color of the star Jews were forced to wear. Yellow was associated with treachery and sickness. So, when the Victorians assigned meanings, yellow got the short end of the stick. It became the color of the green-eyed monster. But it is not just roses. Look at the carnation. Red carnation, my heart aches for you. Dramatic for you. Pink carnation, I'll never forget you. Sweet. Yellow carnation, you have disappointed me. The I'm not mad. I am just disappointed of flowers. Striped carnation number. Just a flat rejection, brutal. And then there is the tulip. We mentioned the red tulip earlier. Declaration of love. But the yellow tulip. There, sunshine in your smile. Wait, That sounds nice. This brings us to a massive academic controversy, the yellow rehabilitation. Some historians argue that as the century progressed, the meaning of yellow softened. In the early 1800s, it was pure jealousy. By the 1880s, influenced by the aesthetic movement, think Oscar Wilde and sunflowers, yellow became artistic. It became cheerful. So, if you received a yellow tulip in 1840, you were insulted. If you received it in 1890, you might just think, oh, nice color. The language was evolving. It had slang. It had generational shifts. You had to know not just what the book said, but when the book was published, you step back from the flower stall. You are dizzy with the implications. You decide to play it safe. You buy a pink rose, grace, gentility, perfect happiness. It's a safe bet. It's the like button of the floral world. But now you have the flower. You have to deliver it. And this is where the physicality of the language kicks in. You can just hand it over. You have to pay attention to your own body. Because the flower is just the noun. Your hand is the verb. You are about to enter the world of floral grammar, where up means yes, down means no, and using the wrong hand turns I love you into I hate you. You are walking across the crowded ballroom. The chandelier is rattling with the vibration of the waltz. You are holding your pink rose, grace at perfect happiness. You are sweating. You spot your crush standing near the punch bowl. You approach them. You extend your arm to offer the flower. Freeze. Which hand are you using? Look down. Are you holding it in your right hand or your left hand? This is not a minor detail. This is the difference between a marriage proposal and a restraining order. This brings us to the mainstream historical fact, the binary grammar. In the strict syntax of florography, the flower is the noun, but the hand is the verb or the operator. The right hand represents the affirmative. It means yes. It means me. It means true. The left hand represents the negative. It means number. It means you. It means false. Let's play this out. Scenario A. You hand the pink rose with your right hand. You are saying, I think you are graceful. Positive statement. Scenario B. You hand the pink rose with your left hand. You are saying, I do not think you are graceful. You just walked up to someone at a party and handed them a flower specifically to tell them they are clumsy. It is the ultimate passive-aggressive insult, but it gets even more stressful when you are waiting for an answer. Let's say you hand them the flower right hand. Good job. They look at it. They reach out to take it. You have to watch their hands like a hawk. If they take it with their right hand, I accept, yes. If they take it with their left hand, I reject. Friend, zoned. If they take it and pin it to their bosom, cleavagey chest, I love you. If they take it and pin it to their hair, be careful, or I am not interested. You are standing there, trying to calculate the trajectory of their hand while maintaining eye contact and trying not to step on anyone. Estress. It is a high-speed game of rock, paper, scissors, but with vegetation, this leads to a niche, spatial detail. The pronoun tilt. The grammar goes deeper. It involves geometry. If you hold the flower and tilt the blossom to the right, the sentiment applies to the giver, me. If you tilt the blossom to the left, the sentiment applies to the receiver, you. Let's take the myrtle flower, meaning love. You hold it up, tilted right. I love you. You hold it up, tilted left. Do you love me? It turns a statement into a question. Imagine the confusion if you have a tremor in your hand. You might be oscillating between I love you and do you love me, so fast that you look like you are having an existential crisis. This complexity brings us to a massive academic controversy. The cognitive load. Debate. Could people actually do this? Camp A. The Gamers argues that Victorians loved complex rules. They played whist. They did intricate embroidery. They memorized long poems. Learning a hand code for flowers was just another parlor game they mastered to alleviate the boredom. Camp B, the skeptics. argues that this is fiction. They claim that while the books existed, in the heat of the moment, at a ball, with music playing and chaperones watching, no one could possibly remember if tilting left meant you or me. Camp B suggests that most people just looked at the flower and guessed. The grammar was an ideal system that fell apart in practice, much like how no one actually uses whom correctly in casual conversation today. You watch your crush, they reach out. They use their right hand. They take the pink rose. They pin it to their chest. Success, you have navigated the minefield. They accepted your perfect happiness. But wait, you look closer at the rose. In your nervousness, did you grab the rose by the stem or the flower? And more importantly, which way is the flower pointing? Is the stem pointing down normal, or is the flower pointing down inverted? Your stomach drops. You realize there is one final catastrophic rule you might have forgotten. The rule of inversion. If you hand someone a flower upside down, it does. T just mean number. It means the opposite of the flower. S meaning. And the opposite of perfect happiness is total misery. You stare at the rose on their chest. Is it right side up? You are about to learn how to turn a bouquet into a curse. You are staring at the pink rose pinned to your crush. S chest. Your heart is pounding. You are trying to remember the orientation of the stem when it left your hand. Was the flower pointing up towards the heavens affirmative? Or was it pointing down towards the floor negative? Because in the language of flowers, gravity is a negation tool. This brings us to the rule of inversion. If you hand someone a flower upside down, it means the opposite of what it usually means. It is the not logic gate of the 19th century. Let us look at the math. A rosebud means confession of love. An inverted rosebud means I do not love you, or rejection. A white lily means modesty. An inverted white lily means vanity. Imagine the level of passive-aggressive power this gives you. You can hand someone a beautiful, expensive bouquet of lilies. To the casual observer, you are being sweet, but to the person receiving it, you are silently screaming, you are the most stuck-up person I have ever met. It is an insult wrapped in a gift. It is the perfect weapon for a society that values politeness over honesty. But you can modify the message even further. You can perform surgery on the flower. You look at the stem of the rose. Does it have thorns? Does it have leaves? This leads to a niche. Tactical detail, the anatomy of fear and hope. In the floral code, the parts of the rose have specific values. Thorns represent fear or painy danger. Leaves represent hope. If you hand someone a rose with thorns but no leaves, you are saying, there is everything to fear. Or, I am afraid you will hurt me. If you hand someone a rose with leaves but no thorns, you are saying, there is everything to hope for. Or, I am vulnerable to you. So, if you are a Victorian suitor, you don't just buy a rose. You prune it. You sit in your room with a pair of scissors. You act like a bomb disposal technician. Do I strip the thorns? Yes, I want to show I trust her. Do I leave the leaves? Yes, I have hope. But if you accidentally strip the leaves and leave the thorns, you have just handed her a stalk of fear and pain. You have basically handed her a threat. This brings us to an academic controversy, the ambiguity of droop. Historians and linguists argue about the practicality of this code. Camp A, the precisionists, argues that the code was rigid. People knew exactly what they were doing. Camp B, the realists, asks a simple question. What happens if the flower wilts? If you hand someone a perfectly upright tulip, declaration of love, but it's a hot day, and the stem gets floppy, the flower droops, it points down. Does the meaning change from love to rejection because of dehydration? Camp B argues that this ambiguity led to massive social anxiety. Was she rejecting me? Or does she just need to put that in water? There are diary entries from the time of lovers agonizing over a drooping hyacinth. He gave it to me inverted. Does he hate me? No, dear. He just has warm hands and killed the flower. You check the pink rose on your crush's chest. It is upright. It has leaves. The thorns are stripped. Perfect happiness plus hope plus no fear. You have hit the jackpot. You have communicated a complex emotional state without saying a word. Your crush smiles. They touch the rose. But then, they reach into their own pocket. They pull out a small sprig of green. It is a leaf, just a leaf. It is basil. You freeze. The color drains from your face, because you know what basil means. You thought you were having a conversation about love, but you are about to find out that the language of flowers has a very dark, very hateful vocabulary. And basil is the nuclear option. You are about to enter the world of the hate bouquet, where you don't say, I love you. You say, you are a monster, and I hope you rot. You are still standing in the ballroom, staring at that sprig of basil in your crush's hand. The shock is vibrating through your body. Basil means hate. It means poverty. It is a slap in the face, but before you storm off or challenge them to a duel, you need to understand why a simple leaf carries such heavy, visceral baggage. You need to understand why the Victorians, a people who put skirts on piano legs because they were too suggestive, were so obsessed with plants in the first place. The answer lies with a Swedish man who has been dead for a century, but whose ghost haunts every single bouquet in this room, Carl Linnaeus. To understand the language of flowers, you have to understand the sexual system of classification. This brings us to a mainstream historical fact, the dirty science. In the mid-18th century, Carl Linnaeus organized the chaos of the natural world. He grouped plants not by color or shape, but by their reproductive organs. He counted the stamens, male parts, and the pistils, female parts, but he didn't. Just count them. He described them in terms that would make a sailor blush. He called the petals the bridal bed. He described a flower with 1 pistil and 6 stamens as a wife with 6 husbands. He wrote about clandestine marriages, cryptogams, and public nuptials. To the scientific community, this was brilliant. To the moral guardians of the 19th century, this was pornography. This leads to a niche educational scandal. Botany for ladies. Botany was considered the only science suitable for women. It was gentle. It was pretty. It was outdoors. But because of Linnaeus, it was also dangerous. Parents were terrified. If their innocent daughters studied botany, they would learn about sexual reproduction. They would learn about polyandry, 1 female, many males happening right there in the tulip bed. So, publishers released censored versions of botany textbooks. They bowdlerized the science. They removed the sexual terms and replaced them with euphemisms. But you know what happens when you censor something? You make it infinitely more interesting. This brings us to a massive academic controversy, the repressed sexuality thesis. Historians like Beverly Seton have argued that the explosion of florography was a direct reaction to this botanical censorship. Camp A, the sublimation school, argues that because Victorians could talk about sex, they talked about flowers. The flower became a proxy for the body. When you handed someone a flower, you weren't just handing them a plant. You were handing them a biological diagram of reproduction that you both knew was naughty but could say out loud. Camp B, the romanticists, argues that this is overthinking it. They say flowers are just pretty symbols of nature. But look at the definitions. The tuberose, meaning dangerous pleasure or voluptuousness. Why? Because the tuberose has a heady, heavy narcotic scent that gets stronger at night. It was rumored that young Victorian girls were forbidden from inhaling the scent of tuberose because it might induce a spontaneous orgasm or amorous hysteria. The orchid, meaning a belle or beauty. But the word orchid comes from the Greek orchis, meaning testicle, because of the shape of the root tubers. Every time a Victorian gentleman pinned an orchid to his lapel, he was walking around with a botanical pun about anatomy, hiding in plain sight. You look back at your crush. The basil is an insult, yes. But the pink rose you gave them, a rose is a complex reproductive structure. By participating in this exchange, you are engaging in a conversation that is biological, primal, and deeply coded. The language of flowers is just a dictionary. It is the Kama Sutra of the garden, translated into polite society. But now, back to the basil. Why is basil hate? Because it does fit the romantic narrative. It is a herb. It is pungent. In Greek folklore, basil had to be sown with cursing and shouting to grow properly. It is the anti-rose. Your crush is telling you that they don't want to play the sexual botany game with you. They want to burn the garden down. You feel a flash of anger. If they want a war, you will give them a war. You are not going to send them a love letter. You are going to build a hate bouquet. This leads to the dark arts of floriography. Most people only know the nice flowers: roses, lilies, violets. But the dictionary is full of insults. You can call someone stupid. You can call them a liar. You can tell them they are old and ugly. And the best part, to the uneducated observer, it just looks like a pretty bunch of greens. You turn on your heel. You leave the ballroom. You are going to the florist. You are going to need geraniums, lots of them, because in the Victorian language, the geranium is the most versatile insult in the world. And you are about to construct a masterpiece of botanical passive aggression. You are standing at the florist's counter, your hands trembling with rage. The sweet scent of the shop makes you sick. You don't want sweet. You want toxic. You want to build a floral arrangement that screams, "I despise you," but looks polite enough to be delivered by a servant. You are about to construct a hate bouquet. This brings us to the geranium. To the modern gardener, the geranium is a boring, reliable pot plant. To the Victorian, it was the Swiss Army knife of insults. You point to a scarlet geranium. Wrap that up. You tell the florist, meaning stupidity. You point to a horseshoe geranium, meaning stupidity again. Just to be sure, you point to a dark geranium, meaning melancholy. As in, you are depressing to be around. But you can just send geraniums. That's too obvious. You need nuance. You need to layer your hatred like a lasagna. You ask for tansy. It is a yellow, button-like flower. It smells sharp and medicinal, meaning, I declare war against you. You ask for orange lilies, meaning hatred. You ask for lobelia, meaning malevolence. You ask for meadowsweet, meaning uselessness. You bunch them together. The bouquet looks chaotic. The colors clash: orange, scarlet, yellow. The smell is a mixture of spicy geranium and bitter tansy. It is an aesthetic disaster, but it is a linguistic masterpiece. You have just written a paragraph that says, "You are a stupid, useless person. I hate you. You make me depressed. And we are now at war." This leads to a niche, social reality, the vegetable insult. If you really wanted to be cruel, you didn't stop at flowers. You used vegetables. In the language of flowers, a potato meant benevolence, boring, but a lettuce, cold-hearted, a cabbage, profit, calling someone a gold digger, and the ultimate insult, a peeled stick. If you sent someone a twig with the bark peeled off, it didn't just mean, "I hate you." It meant, "I am stripping you of your pretensions." It was a way of saying, "I see the real, ugly you." You tie the bouquet with a yellow ribbon, insincerity. You hand the florist a coin. He looks at the ugly arrangement with confusion, but he takes the money. "Shall I include a card?" he asks. "No," you sneer. "The flowers speak for themselves." But do they? This brings us to a massive academic controversy, the failed delivery theory. Historians love the idea of the hate bouquet. It's dramatic. It's funny. But did it actually work? Campa, the literary school, points to novels and plays where characters send stinging floral rebukes. They argue it was a common trope because it reflected reality. Camp B, the pragmatists, argues that in real life, this was a high-risk strategy with a low success rate. Why? Because the recipient has to be fluent in the code. Imagine you send this bouquet to your crush. They receive it. They don't have a dictionary handy, or maybe they have the wrong dictionary. Remember the copyright chaos? They look at the flowers and think, oh, orange lilies, how bold, and geraniums, how colorful. They don't see hatred and stupidity. They see bright and happy. Instead of being insulted, they put it in water and display it on the mantelpiece. You haven't insulted them. You have decorated their house. Camp B argues that most hate bouquets were fantasies of the sender, never fully understood by the receiver. It was a scream into the void. You hand the bouquet to a street urchin to deliver. Take this to the ballroom, you order. You watch the boy run off. You feel a grim satisfaction, even if they don't understand the words. The vibe of the bouquet is hostile. It smells like war. But as you calm down, you realize something. You just sent a bundle of loose stems. They are messy. They will wilt in an hour. If you wanted this message to be permanent, if you wanted it to be a formal declaration of war, you shouldn't have just tied it with a ribbon. You should have built a mussy. This brings us to the architecture of the bouquet. In the Victorian era, you didn't just throw flowers in a vase. You built them into a rigid, concentric structure that you could hold in your hand like a scepter. It was the formatted text of the floral world. And if you want your insult to land with the weight of a legal document, you need to structure it. You need to organize your hate into circles. You run after the boy. Wait, you shout. Bring it back. I need to restructure the argument. You are about to learn the geometry of the Victorian posy, and you are going to find out that the center of the circle is the most dangerous place to be. You are sitting on a bench on the edge of Covent Garden, surrounded by a pile of angry vegetation. You have retrieved your hate bouquet from the confused street urchin. It looks like a mess. It looks like a salad that fell on the floor. If you want your insult to be taken seriously, you need to stop acting like a gardener and start acting like an architect. You need to build a mussy. This brings us to a mainstream historical fact, the Victorian nosegay. A mussy or nosegay wasn't just a bunch of flowers. It was a rigid, highly engineered structure. It was small, round, and dense. The flowers weren't arranged loosely, they were strangled. They were packed in concentric circles, radiating out from a single center point. Why? Because the mussy wasn't just decorative. It was a sentence structure. You read it from the center out. The middle flower is the subject main verb. The surrounding rings are the adjective adverbs. You strip the leaves off the stems. You need them bare. You pick your centerpiece. This is the heart of the message. You choose the basil, hate. You hold it upright. Now, the first ring, you surround the basil with scarlet geraniums, stupidity. You pack them tight, creating a ring of red fire around the green heart now. The sentence reads, I hate your stupidity. Next, the second ring, you add meadowsweet, uselessness. Now the sentence reads, I hate your stupidity and uselessness. Finally, the outer ring, you finish it with tansy, I declare war. It is a target, a bullseye of rage. I hate your stupidity and uselessness, so I declare war. You tie the stems together with wet string. You pull it so tight the sap oozes out. The flowers are immobilized. They cannot droop. They cannot change their meaning. You have locked the insult in place, but you can just hand someone a wet bundle of stems. It ruins the gloves. You reach into your pocket, or head back to a silver shop, for the ultimate accessory, the porte bouquet. This leads to a niche, tech fashion detail, the silver holster. A porte bouquet holder was a funnel-shaped device made of silver, gold, or mother of pearl. You shove the stems into the funnel inside. There is usually damp moss or a small reservoir of water to keep the flowers alive. But the best part is the pin. You push a long, sharp pin through the holes in the silver funnel, piercing the stems of the flowers, locking them into the holder. It is a weaponized accessory. Some porte bouquets even had little mirrors attached, so a lady could check her nose, or tripods, so she could set it on the table without it falling over. You slide your hate bouquet into a silver holder. You stab the pin through the stems. Crunch. Now it looks elegant. It looks expensive. It looks like a piece of jewelry. But inside, it is screaming. This structural obsession brings us to a massive academic controversy, the Biedermeier versus communication debate. Why did bouquets become so rigid? Campe, the linguists, argues that the concentric circles were essential for the language. You needed a linear way to read the flowers. Without the circles, you could tell which adjective, modified, which noun. The structure served the code. Camp B, the decorators, argues that this is backward. They point to the Biedermeier era, roughly 1815 to 1848, in Germany and Austria. The aesthetic of the time was all about control, symmetry, and geometric order. They argue that mussies were round and tight, because that was the fashion, not because of the language. Camp B suggests that people bought these bouquets because they looked tidy on a coffee table, not because they were reading them. The language was grafted onto the fashion later to justify the expense. Basically, did form follow function, or did function hijack the form? You look at your silver-encased weapon. It is perfect. To the uneducated eye, it is a lovely, colorful posy in a silver holder. To the educated eye, it is a declaration of total hostility. You hand it back to the delivery boy. Do not drop it, you warn, and make sure they see the basil in the center. You watch him run off. You feel a sense of relief. You have structured your anger. You have turned a messy emotion into a neat geometric object. But as you walk away, a question nags at you. Why basil? Why geraniums? You know what they mean. But why do they mean it? Why is a narcissus associated with self-love? Why is a hyacinth associated with sorrow? Why is an anemone forsaken? You realize that Latour and the other dictionary writers didn't just make this stuff up, mostly. They stole it. They stole it from the oldest stories in the Western world. They stole it from the Greeks. You are about to dive into the mythology behind the botany. You are about to learn that your flower garden is actually a graveyard of ancient Greek teenagers who died tragic, stupid deaths and turned into plants. The dictionary is just a code. It is a book of ghosts. You are walking through a Victorian garden trying to calm down after your rage-fueled bouquet construction. The garden is neat, manicured, and polite. But if you listen closely, you can almost hear the screaming, because this garden is not just a collection of plants. It is a morgue. You stop in front of a narcissus daffodil. In the language of flowers, it means self-love or egotism. Why? This brings us to a mainstream mythological fact. The boy who loved his reflection. You know the story. Narcissus was a Greek hunter so beautiful he rejected everyone. The goddess Nemesis punished him by making him fall in love with his own reflection in a pool. He could leave. He stared at himself until he died of starvation, or drowned, depending on the version. When the nymphs came to collect his body, it was gone. In its place was a flower with a golden center surrounded by white petals. The narcissus, the flower hangs its head down, as if forever gazing into the water. Every time you hand someone a daffodil, you aren't just giving them a spring bloom. You are invoking a suicide caused by vanity. You move to the hyacinth, meaning sorrow, sports, or rashness. Why sports? Because Hyacinthus was a Spartan prince and the lover of the god Apollo. They were playing discus, a sport. Apollo threw the discus. It hit the ground, bounced, and struck Hyacinthus in the head, killing him instantly. Apollo, grief-stricken, refused to let Hades take the soul. Instead, he turned the spilled blood into a flower. If you look closely at the petals of a wild hyacinth or larkspur, botany gets messy here. The Greeks believed you could see the letters AI, AI inscribed on them. AI is the Greek cry of grief, alas. The flower is literally screaming, alas, forever. So when you give a hyacinth, you are saying, I am sorry for your loss, or don't play sports with gods. And then the anemone, meaning forsaken. This is the blood of Adonis, the lover of Aphrodite. He was gored by a boar, sent by a jealous Ares. He bled out in Aphrodite's arms. His blood hit the ground and turned into the red anemone. But why forsaken? Because the anemone is fragile. The wind blows the petals off almost immediately. The name comes from anemos, wind. The flower is born from blood, lives for a day, and is destroyed by the wind. It is the perfect symbol for a love that was intense, tragic, and brief. This leads to a niche, literary reality. The Ovidian copy-paste. Charlotte de Latour and the other dictionary writers didn't invent these meanings. They copy-pasted them directly from Ovid's Metamorphoses. They took these violent, sexual, tragic stories of transformation and sanitized them into polite parlor messages. The Victorians loved Ovid because he gave them a way to talk about death and desire under the guise of classical education. You could talk about a hyacinth without explicitly mentioning gay lovers playing discus. You could talk about an anemone without mentioning the gore of the boar hunt. The flower became a euphemism for trauma, but not all meanings are ancient. Some are based on biological time. You look at your watch, it is late afternoon. You realize that the hate bouquet you sent earlier has a ticking clock attached to it. Because a flower is a living thing, it changes, and as it changes, its meaning shifts. This brings us to a massive academic controversy, the wilted semantics. Does a dead flower mean the same thing as a live flower, just dead? Or does it mean the past tense of the sentiment? Campe, the static meaning school, argues a rose is a rose. A dead rose just means you are a bad gardener. Camp B, the temporal linguists, argues that the state of the flower dictates the time of the verb, a fresh rosebud. I am beginning to love you, present continuous. A full bloom rose, I love you, present simple. A wilted rose, I loved you, past simple. A deaded dried rose, I will love you forever, future eternal, or our love is dead, depending on context. Imagine the anxiety. You send a fresh rose. The delivery boy gets stuck in traffic. He arrives 4 hours later. The rose has started to droop. The recipient looks at it. He loved me, past tense. What did I do in the last 4 hours? You have accidentally broken up with them via photosynthesis. You look at the flowers in the garden. They are fading in the twilight. You realize that this language is terrifyingly unstable. It relies on freshness. It relies on water. It relies on the receiver, knowing Ovid. It is a language built on decay, but as the 19th century turns into the 20th, a new group of people will arrive. They don't care about Ovid. They don't care about tradition. They are the aesthetes, the decadents. They want to hack the language. They want to create flowers that don't exist in nature. You are about to meet a man with a green carnation in his buttonhole, and he is going to teach you that sometimes the most powerful message is what the flower means in the book, but what it means to the secret club that wears it. The calendar has flipped. The heavy, stuffy curtains of the mid-Victorian era are being pulled back. We are in the 1890s. The naughty 90s. You are standing in the lobby of the St. James's Theatre in London. It is the opening night of Lady Windermere's Fan. The air is thick with cigarette smoke and the scent of expensive cologne. The crowd is different here. The men aren't wearing the stiff, black frock coats of their fathers. They are wearing velvet jackets. Their hair is a little too long. They look bored, but it is a practiced, elegant boredom. You spot the ringleader, Oscar Wilde. He is holding court in the center of the room. He is larger than life, witty, and dangerously charming. But your eyes are drawn to his lapel. Pinned to his buttonhole is a flower. It is a carnation, but it is red. My heart aches. It is pink. I'll never forget you. And it is yellow. Disappointment. It is green. A bright, unnatural, vivid emerald green. You blink. You know your botany. Carnations do not grow green. This flower is a lie. And that is exactly the point. This brings us to a mainstream historical fact. The cult of the artificial. Oscar Wilde and the aesthetes rejected the Victorian obsession with nature. They argued that nature was messy, crude, and uncomfortable. Art, they said, should be superior to nature. By wearing a green carnation, Wilde was making a statement. Nature could do this, I did. It was a celebration of artifice. It was a rejection of the natural order that the previous generation loved so much, while your grandmother used flowers to talk about innocence and modesty. Wilde is using a flower to talk about decadence and style. But how did he get it green? This leads to a niche, chemical reality. The arsenic dip. You can grow a green carnation. You have to dye it. Florists would take a white carnation and let it drink water mixed with green dye, or they would dip the petals directly. But in the 1890s, green dyes often contained arsenic scale. S green or Paris green, the flower on Wilde's chest might be slowly off, gassing toxic fumes. It fits perfectly. It is beautiful. It is artificial. And it is slightly poisonous. It is the perfect metaphor for the aesthetic movement. But there is a deeper, darker code hiding in those petals. You look around the lobby. You notice that Wilde isn't the only one wearing it. A dozen other young men, handsome, well-dressed, slightly effeminate, are also wearing green carnations. They catch each other's eyes. They nod. You realize that this is just a fashion statement. It is a shibboleth. It is a secret password used by a persecuted minority to identify each other in public. This brings us to a massive academic controversy. The Uranian Code. Was the green carnation a symbol for homosexuality? Campa, the queer historians, argues. Absolutely. In 19th century Paris, there was a tradition among gay men of wearing a green carnation because it was unnatural, a reclamation of the insult thrown at them. Wilde imported this code to London. It signaled that you were in the life. It was a way to say, I am gay without getting arrested, since homosexuality was illegal. Camp B, the ambiguity theorists, argues that Wilde was playing a more complex game. When asked what the flower meant, Wilde famously replied, "Nothing whatever, but that is just what nobody will guess." Camp B suggests that Wilde loved the confusion. He wanted people to whisper. He wanted to shock the bourgeoisie. If it meant gay, it was a crime. If it meant nothing, it was art. By hovering between the two, he created a bubble of mystery. He didn't want a definition. He wanted a reaction. You watch the crowd. The old Victorian matrons are staring at the green flowers with horror. They check their dictionaries. Green carnation, it, not in the book. Latour didn't list it. Robert T.S. didn't list it. The code has been broken. The dictionary is obsolete. These young men have invented a new language that the old guard cannot translate. But this rebellion comes at a cost. A few years later, in 1895, Oscar Wilde will stand trial for gross indecency. The Green Carnation will be mentioned. The novel The Green Carnation, a satire of Wilde, will be used against him. The flower will stop being a symbol of art and start being a symbol of evidence. The fun is over. The language of flowers is no longer a parlor game. It has become a matter of criminal law. You leave the theater. The fog is thick outside. You feel a shift in the wind. The era of the secret code is ending. Why? Because the world is speeding up. You look down the street. You see a telegraph wire. You see a telephone line. People don't have time to dye flowers green anymore. They don't have time to build tussy-mussies. They want to say, "I love you," or "I hate you now." They don't want to wait for a delivery boy. You are about to witness the death of the flower language. And the killer isn't a fungus or a drought. It is a machine. It is the telegram. And a war that will turn the poppy from a symbol of sleep into a symbol of death. You are standing in a post office in London. The year is 1914. The air smells of ozone, damp wool, and stale glue. The silence of the flower garden is gone, replaced by a frantic, rhythmic, mechanical chatter. Click, clack, stop. Click, clack, stop. It is the sound of the telegraph. You are holding a yellow slip of paper. You want to send a message to your sweetheart. In the old days, you would have spent hours selecting a hyacinth, "I am sorry," wrapping it in ferns, sincerity, and tying it with a blue ribbon. You would have constructed a physical poem. But now, you have to pay by the word. Every word costs a penny. You look at the form. You look at your wallet. You write, "Miss, you stop home, soon stop." You have just killed the language of flowers. This brings us to a mainstream historical fact, the death of nuance. Florography thrived on ambiguity. It required time to encode and time to decode. It was a slow language for a slow world. The telegraph, and later the telephone, was a fast language for a fast world. Technology demanded brevity. You could send a yellow tulip via Morse code without typing out, "I am smiling at you in a friendly way." It ruined the vibe. The immediacy of the 20th century stripped away the layers of Victorian repression. If you wanted to say, "I love you," you just said it. If you wanted to break up, you sent a telegram saying, "Don't come." The flower became a decoration, not a sentence. But the final nail in the coffin wasn't technology. It was mud. The summer of 1914 ends. The world goes to war. The young men who used to wear green carnations in the theater are now wearing khaki in the trenches of France. The gardens of Europe are churned into sludge. And in this hellscape, one flower rises from the dead. But it changes its meaning so violently that the old dictionary becomes useless. You are standing in a field in Flanders, Belgium. It is no longer a field, it is a cratered moonscape. The earth has been ripped open by artillery shells. The trees are splintered skeletons, but covering the mounds of disturbed earth is a blanket of blood-red flowers, the poppy Papaver roeus. This leads to a niche botanical reality, the dormant seed. Why poppies? Why not daisies or roses? Because poppy seeds are survivors. They can lie dormant in the soil for decades, even centuries. They wait. They need one specific thing to trigger germination. Light. When the bombs churned up the soil, they brought the deep, buried seeds to the surface. They exposed the history of the earth to the sun. The poppies bloomed because of the destruction. They were the biological consequence of bombardment. You look at the red flower. In the Victorian dictionary, Latour, Tias, the poppy meant sleep or oblivion. It was associated with opium. It was the flower of forgetting. If you gave someone a poppy in 1850, you were telling them to relax, or perhaps referencing Morpheus, the god of dreams. But in 1915, a Canadian doctor named John McCrae sat in the back of an ambulance and wrote a poem. In Flanders fields the poppies blow the fee between the crosses, row on row. Suddenly, the meaning flipped. The poppy no longer meant sleep. It meant remembrance. It meant we will never forget. It transformed from a symbol of drug-induced oblivion into a symbol of eternal vigilance. The Victorian definition was erased by the sheer weight of the bodies lying beneath the roots. This brings us to a massive academic and social controversy. The white poppy movement, the red poppy, became the symbol of the Royal British Legion. It was sold to raise money for veterans. It was patriotic. But in 1933, a bit later, but the sentiment starts here. A group called the Women's Cooperative Guild started wearing white poppies. Why? Campa, the red poppy traditionalists, argued that the red poppy honors the sacrifice. It is about gratitude. To wear anything else is an insult to the dead. Camp B, the white poppy pacifists, argued that the red poppy had become a glorification of war. They said it focused too much on the military and not enough on the peace. They chose white for peace and no more war. This sparked a culture war that continues to this day in the UK. If you wear a white poppy, you are making a political statement. You are using the language of flowers again, but this time, the stakes aren't a romance. They are geopolitical. You stand in the trench. You pick a red poppy. The petals are fragile. They fall apart in your hand. You realize that the era of the tussy-mussy is gone. You can send this flower to your sweetheart. It won't survive the journey. And even if it did, what would it say? I am alive. I am afraid. The complexity of the old language, the distinction between a damask rose and a cabbage rose, feels frivolous. Now, when you are surrounded by death, you don't need a dictionary to interpret a flower. You just need to see something beautiful to remind you that the world is entirely made of mud. You put the poppy in your pocket, it withers instantly. You look at the horizon. The sun is setting through the smoke of mustard gas. The Victorian era didn't just end, it was murdered. The rigid social rules, the chaperones, the secret codes, they were blown apart by the first machine gun volley. People stopped caring about whether they held a flower with their left hand or right hand. They were just glad to still have hands. The war ends. The survivors go home, but they don't go back to the flower shops. They don't buy dictionaries. They plant gardens. Yes, but they plant them for comfort, not for communication. The secret code is broken. The cipher keys are lost in the attic. The flowers go silent, but they aren't gone. The books are still there. The old copies of La Language des Fleurs are sitting on bookshelves, gathering dust, waiting for someone to open them, waiting for someone to realize that we never really stopped using symbols. We just changed the medium. You are about to jump forward to the present day. You are going to climb into an attic, and you are going to find a book that smells of lavender and old glue, and you will realize that even though we use emojis now, we are still just as desperate to say the things we cannot speak. We are moving forward again. The trenches of WWE have been filled in. The jazz age has burned itself out. We are in the 1950s. You are standing in a bright, clean, neon-lit flower shop in an American suburb. The air smells different here. It doesn't smell like damp earth or spicy geraniums. It smells like refrigerated air and chlorine. You are looking at a bucket of roses, but these aren't the messy, fragrant cabbage roses of the Victorian era. These are hybrid tea roses. They are perfectly straight. They have long, stiff stems. The petals are tight and uniform, and they have no smell. Zero. They look like they were made of red plastic. This brings us to a mainstream historical fact, the industrialization of flora. In the mid-20th century, the flower industry changed. It became about logistics. Flowers had to be shipped across continents in refrigerated trucks and planes. Breeders stopped caring about scent, which comes from volatile oils that make the flower die faster, and started breeding for durability and stem length. They created a zombie rose. It looks perfect. It lasts for 2 weeks. but it has lost its soul. You watch a man walk in. He is wearing a gray flannel suit. He looks guilty. "I need a dozen red roses," he says. "For my wife." The florist nods. He grabs 12 identical red stems. He wraps them in green plastic paper. He doesn't, he asks. "Do you want to strip the thorns to show trust?" He does. He asks. "Do you want to add a sprig of fern for sincerity?" He just hands over the bundle. This leads to the death of the vocabulary. In the Victorian era, you had a dictionary of 2,000 words. You could say, "I hate your stupidity," or "Your coldness freezes me." Now, you have a dictionary with exactly 3 words. Red rose equals "I love you," or "I am sorry." Carnation equals "Mother's Day." Lily equals "funeral." The nuance is gone. The hate bouquet is extinct. Try asking a modern florist for a bouquet that says, "You are a liar." They will look at you like you are insane. They don't stock tansy. They don't stock basil. They only stock basil. They only stock happy. The commercial industry sanitized the language. They removed all the negative words because negative emotions don't sell. FTD, florists. Transworld Delivery coined the slogan, "Say it with flowers." But they didn't really mean say it. They meant say something nice. They turned a complex language into a Hallmark greeting card. This brings us to a niche. Sociological reality. The dozen cliché. Why a dozen? Why 12? In the Victorian era, tussie, mussies were small. They were personal. But in the 20th century, volume became the signifier of value. If you love her a little, you give 1 rose. If you love her a lot, you give 12. If you cheated on her, you give 24. The meaning shifted from the type of flower to the quantity of the flower. It became a currency. It became inflationary. You look at the man with the 12 plastic-looking roses. He is communicating. He is paying a fine. But there is a resistance movement hiding in plain sight. You walk out of the shop and down the street. You pass a wedding dress shop. In the window, there is a photo of a royal wedding. Maybe it's Queen Elizabeth II, 1947, or Grace Kelly, 1956. You look at the bouquet. It is just red roses. It is complex. It is white. And tucked inside, hidden among the orchids, is a sprig of myrtle. This leads to a mainstream historical tradition, the royal sprig. Every British royal bride, since Queen Victoria, specifically her daughter, Princess Victoria, has carried a sprig of myrtle in her bouquet. Why? Because myrtle means Hebrew emblem of marriage, or love. But it's not just any myrtle. It comes from a specific bush planted by Queen Victoria at Osborne House in 1845. It is a living link. While the rest of the world forgot the language, the royals kept speaking it. They kept the code alive in the highest profile event on the planet. When Kate Middleton married Prince William in 2011, her bouquet was a masterclass in Victorian revival. Lily of the Valley, return of happiness. Sweet William, gallantry and a pun on her husband's name, Hyacinth, constancy of love, ivy, fidelity, and, of course, the myrtle. She wasn't just holding flowers. She was holding a paragraph. She was speaking to history. You realize that the language didn't die. It just went dormant. It hid in the rituals of the elite. It hid in the subconscious. Why do we still give red roses on Valentine's Day? We don't know why. We just know we should. We are repeating a sentence we no longer understand, like a tourist reciting a phrasebook without knowing the grammar. You walk past a tattoo parlor. Inside, a young woman is getting inked. She is getting a generic rose. She is getting a forget me not. She knows what it means. She looked it up on the internet. The internet, you smile. Technology killed the language. Telegram. But technology is about to resurrect it. Google. People are starting to look for meaning again. They are tired of the plastic roses. They want the code back. You turn the corner. You see an old house with a dusty attic window. You feel a pull. You know that inside that attic, inside a trunk, There is a book with a green cover and gold letters. It is waiting for you. It is time to go back to the source. It is time to find the dictionary. You are standing in the dusty attic of an old Victorian house. The air is thick with the smell of dry wood, mothballs, and forgotten history. Sunlight streams through a small window, illuminating motes of dust dancing in the air. You are here to find the key. You open a heavy wooden trunk. Inside, nestled among lace doilies and faded letters, is a small book. The cover is emerald green cloth, embossed with gold ivy leaves. The title reads, "The Language of Flowers." You pick it up. It is fragile. The spine cracks as you open it, but as you flip the pages, something falls out. It is a pressed flower. It is brown, brittle, and paper thin. You can barely tell what it was. Maybe a pansy, maybe a violet. You look at the page it marked. Pansy, think of me. You realize that this book wasn't just a reference manual. It was a tool. Someone used this. Someone pressed this flower 100 years ago, hoping that the message would be received. Did it work? Did the recipient think of them, or is this the flower that was never sent? The draft folder of the 19th century. This brings us to a massive academic controversy, the sentimental revival. In the 21st century, there has been a resurgence of interest in florography. Novels like The Language of Flowers by Vanessa Diffenbaugh became bestsellers. Wedding blogs are full of flower meanings. Camp, the authenticists, argues that this modern revival is fake. We are using simplified, sanitized meanings. We are ignoring the complexity, the hate bouquets, and the left-hand rule. We are playing a shallow version of the game. Camp B, the neo-romantics, argues that it doesn't matter. The desire for meaning is real. We are tired of digital communication. We are tired of the blue checkmark, red, receipt. We want something tangible. We want a code. We want to believe that a physical object can carry an emotional weight that a text message cannot. You close the book. You slip it into your pocket. You walk downstairs. You pull out your phone. You open your messaging app. You look at the emojis. Time, you realize that we are still doing it. We send a red rose emoji to say, "I love you." We send a wilted flower emoji to say, "I am sad." We send a peach emoji. Well, let's not get into Linnaeus again, but the code has evolved. It has become digital. It has become slang, but the core impulse is the same. We are using symbols from nature to talk about our bodies and our hearts, because sometimes words are just too awkward. You walk out of the house. You pass a community garden. Someone has planted a bed of sunflowers. In the Victorian language, the sunflower meant haughtiness or false riches. But to you today, it just looks like happiness. You realize that the language is not dead. It is just uncontrolled. It is a living, breathing, mutating slang. You can make up your own meanings. You can decide that a dandelion means resilience. You can decide that a cactus means don't touch me, I am fragile. You pick a dandelion puff, you blow on it. The seeds scatter in the wind, oracle of time. That was the Victorian meaning for blowing a dandelion clock. You watch the seeds fly. You are the carrier of the code now. You know the secret of the basil. You know the danger of the yellow rose. And you know that the next time someone hands you a bouquet, you just smell it. You will read it. You walk down the street. The sun is setting. You feel a strange sense of connection to all the lovers, haters, and gossipers of history who stood in gardens just like this one, clutching a stem, hoping that the other person would understand what they could say. You take out the pressed pansy from your pocket. "Think of me," you whisper. And you know that somewhere, across the centuries, someone is listening. The final wilt, and so, the book is closed. The dictionary is back on the shelf. The frantic whispers of the ballroom have faded into the silence of the library. You can stop decoding now. You don't have to worry about which hand you use. You don't have to worry if the rose is yellow or pink. The pressure to say the perfect thing, to send the perfect message, has lifted. Imagine you are lying in a field of tall grass. It is late summer. The air is warm and smells of dry hay and wildflowers. There is no code here. The flowers aren't trying to tell you anything. They are just existing. The wind rustles through the stems, creating a soft, rhythmic shh. You are safe. You are understood without saying a word. The anxiety of communication, the fear of being misunderstood, the fear of the wrong signal is gone. You are fluent in the language of silence. Let the scent of lavender and sleep wash over you. The garden is closing its petals for the night. The message has been received. You are loved. Drift. Sleep. The story ends here. Good night.